Let's pray for Gilbert that they will have a baby girl soon in the name of Jesus. All right, I'm going to pass it on to Gilbert. Amen. God bless you, bro.
Well, don't pray for that, by the way. No, that. Wow. No, it's an honor, and I'm glad to see. I've been referring to Pastor Randy's son as baby pastor. That's my baby pastor right there. So it's an honor that he's here with us, and it's good to see the family here with Pastor Randy's daughters. And you guys excited? Ready? Yeah? Good? All right. I just want to say, if you didn't show up yesterday for the fight, man, you missed out, unless you saw it, I guess, at home. But, man, it was a good fight. It was awesome. It was a good time, a good fellowship here. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to hear what God has for us, and I just come expectant. I hope that you come expectant. And this month was just an awesome month, a victorious month, specifically for me, because my wife was preaching 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to reference a little bit about, or a lot about what she spoke about, because it was just that good. And that was just, and I kid you not, that was just a small part to the testimony that God has over Michelle's life, my wife's life. Baby, you did such a good job. You did. And so I told her, you're preaching next month. She's like, what? No, she'll be up here soon. And like I said, that was just a small part to what God has done in our lives. And I was just excited for that. So I want to start with a quick story. It's not a crazy story, but I just want to start because it kind of sets the premise to what we're going to be talking about today. And this story begins not that long ago, but I was in high school, so maybe kind of long ago. And I was one of the straight A, special, like very good, well-behaved students in school. Come on. No, I was in this class in my school, and this class was for students who were at risk at failing the state exam. At that time, it was called the tax test, I believe, or TOS test. I don't remember. It was called something. Now it's called the STAR. So they put us in this class, right? And you can imagine this class was like a bunch of misfits, man. Like we were just all over the place. And so we were in this class, and it was one of my favorite classes. And I remember one day the teacher says, hey, Gilbert, go up and go up and solve this math problem for me. I said, okay, whatever. And I'm joking, trying to make people laugh. And I go up, and she tells me the problem, and I write it out. She says, but you got to show your work. And I said, okay. And I got my friends whispering, like, the answers on the back and stuff. And I'm like, shh. So I figure out the problem, show my work, and get the answer. And it was right. And she says, okay, here's another one. Do it again, write it out, show my work, boom, right. And she says, okay, well, try this one. She gets a little bit more difficult. Do it, write it out, bam. She did that about 5 times. After that class, she says, hey, the bell rings. She says, Gilbert, I want you to stay behind real quick. I said, okay. I'm like, man, what did I do? Or what did I do? I don't know. So I went to her, and she says, why are you in here? See, that was the first time in my life that I realized that the success that I have in life is gonna have to be beyond my knowledge, my IQ, my ability to learn. See, determination is what carries you further. It's the key to success. You can know everything in the world, but if you don't have that determination, you won't make it too far. I knew the work. I knew how to solve the problems, but I was categorized as a person who was at risk of failing. But it wasn't because I didn't know. It was because I was lazy, because I had given up on myself. It's because I had my priorities messed up. And so I remember that, and since then, I knew it wasn't just about your knowledge. It was about your determination. Determination is knowing that failure, yes, is an option, but it's also understanding that failure is not a permanent condition. It's understanding that failure is just one thing you have to go through and you move forward. So I know that sometimes in life, or many times in life, we may feel defeated. We may feel that we failed, that we messed up. Maybe it's some defeat in your marriage, like my wife and I have passed through many times. Maybe there's someone in your life that you're just about to give up on because you just can't take it anymore. You're praying for them and you see no change. Seems like the more you pray, the further they get. Maybe it's an addiction that you have that you're trying to overcome. And yes, you have some small victories, but yet you fall back from time to time. And you can't seem to put it behind you. I want to read the word in Hebrews 10, 35, 36, and we'll have it up here on the screen. And it says, do not throw away this confidence, this confident trust in the Lord. Remember that the great reward it brings to you. Patient endurance is what you need now, so that you will continue to do God's will. Then you will receive all that he has promised. The title of today's message is Determination is the Key to Success. Now, I want to look at a story that I've spoken about before, and a lot of the things that I'm going to speak about today, God has brought it to me before. There's been times where I've come up here and I've preached this, and God reminded me about this. And I want to just go through, and this story is found in Joshua 6, chapter 6, verse 1 through 5. And we're going to read it here. It says, now the gates of Jericho were tightly shut because the people were afraid of the Israelites. No one was allowed to go in or out. But the Lord said to Joshua, I have given you Jericho, its king and all its strong warriors. You and your fighting men should march around the town once a day for 6 days. 7 priests will walk ahead of the ark, each carrying a ram's horn. On the 7th day, you are to march around the town 7 times, with the priests blowing the horns. When you hear the priests give one long blast on the ram's horns, and all the people shout as loud as they can, then the walls of the town will collapse, and the people can charge straight into the town. This is an amazing story, right? How many of us have read this and you've heard it used in preachings and in teachings? Why do we give up? Why do we give up? This was a question that came up when I was in my prayer, in my time of studying. Why do we give up? God has promised us so much. There is a book full of promises. There has been words spoken directly from the heart of God over you. Why do we give up? I want to look at 2 reasons that I believe why we give up. First one is our perspective is limited. You see, the problem with Jericho wasn't that the city was a big, massive city. If you study the city of Jericho, it wasn't this big, massive place. But they had walls that were high, and where they would not let you see inside them. You could only see the walls from the outside. You couldn't see past them. Some of us here can relate to that. Some of us here can relate to, I can't see past this problem. I can't see past this addiction. I can't see past this thing that doesn't change in my life. I just can't see past it. And our perspective is stuck on the problem or the wall or the circumstance that is standing right there before you. And the funny thing about walls is they do not move. Walls will stay there. Something that my wife said last week that really spoke to me, that really, woo. Or 2 weeks ago, sorry. She says that sometimes God is not preparing the blessing. He's preparing you for the blessing. The blessing is already there. The promise is there. And he has to prepare your heart, your character, who you are, your environment for you to step into that blessing. We get stuck focusing on the walls instead of the promise. I found it interesting that in verse 1, it says that the walls of Jericho, these tall walls, were so secure that no one was going in and out. But in verse 2, what does he say? I've given you Jericho. I've given you this city. You see, our perspective is too caught up in what's happening right before us. But God's working on a promise. God's working on something behind the wall. God's working on something that we can't see yet. God will say something about you or give you a promise that doesn't make sense sometimes at the time, and you don't realize what God is saying, but he sees something inside of you that he knows that you have and he knows that you carry. And sometimes we get confused and we think, no, that wasn't from God. No, that can't be for me. That promise is for pastor because he comes up here and he preaches the word and he has to do that. I can't do that. Every single person in here today, from baby pastor all the way up, has been called. You have a calling, a ministry, and you may not see it, and you're probably looking at some walls in front of you. That doesn't mean that the calling isn't there. God had said, here's Jericho, it's yours. But the walls are high, and no one can go in or out. If you weren't here for my wife's testimony 2 weeks ago, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. Something she said that was hard for me to hear, but I understand it. Is that God told her to leave. He said, leave. Once, and she didn't listen. Second, she didn't listen. And God kept telling her, you need to go. Her perspective at the time was caught up in, what if I leave and this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens? Well, aren't we supposed to be together because divorce is... I'm here to tell you right now, not once did I or my wife ever talk about divorce. Ever. But God said, leave. But sometimes our perspective is so caught up in what's right in front of us. But what God was saying, all you got to do is move yourself so that I could step into work. So that I could step in and move in you and in him. But we're so caught up in our own understanding, right? But what if this, and what if that? You see, the promise of till death do us part didn't leave when she left. It was already promised over our life, over our marriage, till death do us part. But in the moment, my perspective and her perspective were limited by our mistakes and by our failures. The story of Jericho, many of us read this portion and it sounds so amazing and it sounds awesome, and because it is awesome and because it is amazing. But sometimes we forget that it took many years of walking through the desert, of going through some things to get to this point, to get to where the promise was. There was some hidden battles that some people didn't even see until they got to this point. Questioning God through many different obstacles. Well, where are you, God? We're here in the middle of the desert, and you promised us. There's so much more to the story. Determination will get you through those private battles. Every single one of us has a battle that's private, that maybe you don't have the courage, and I include myself in this. You haven't had the courage to speak to someone about it. But God is there with you. God is there with you in those moments. The second reason why we give up is because we don't see the progress that we want to see. My wife said something, and it's very true. Yes, we go through pain, and there is pain that's okay, because you can see the progress. You know what's coming. You know what the pain is giving you. But what happens when you don't see the change, when you don't see the progress, when you don't see the prayers being answered, when you don't see the healing coming? I found it interesting because in the story of Jericho, they walked around the city, but nothing happened. Let's go for another walk. Imagine if we were there, right? Like, Joshua's calling the walk. Let's go walk. And I can imagine some of them thought, man, this is really pointless. What are we doing? It would have been nice, is like at the end of the day, after a lap around, or however many times they went around, you would see maybe like a crack, a little crack show up, a brick fall off, something. It would be nice. Then look at that. Let's walk again. But they didn't see anything. And God said, walk. And I can imagine to them, like us, when God tells us to do something, and we think, this is pointless. Why do I gotta be there? Why do I gotta show up? Why do I gotta do this? This is pointless. Nothing is happening. I'm not getting anywhere. I don't see the change. One of the things that Joshua told them to do while they walked was to stay quiet. Stay quiet. Wait till I tell you to shout, but in the meantime, stay quiet. Sometimes our mouths can be our own worst enemy, right? We say some things, we let go of some things, and we begin to convince ourselves about other things, and none of it's from God. Sometimes we got to just be quiet and keep going. You got to be quiet and just keep doing what God's calling you to do. You got to be quiet and keep obeying God. Keep quiet, keep giving. Keep quiet, keep serving. I don't know what this is for, and I don't see any progress, but I'm obedient, and I'm going to continue to do it. Told them to be quiet because sometimes we'll go to other people, and you know how that goes. But we got to keep quiet. And if we need to talk to God. If there's some things in here, give it to God, and I guarantee you, He will respond. He will tell you. Keep quiet and keep loving. Keep quiet and keep forgiving. I know that sometimes it seems that there are moments in your life where you don't see progress. You don't see what God is doing. You don't see any change. We associate lack of progress with lack of God. And you get into this state where you question God. Where are you? Where are you, God? And maybe you don't do that per se. Maybe you don't go home and say, God, where are you? But you do that by going to somewhere else. You do that by going to something else. You do that by pushing something that's not for you. You do that by taking action on something that God said it wasn't for you yet. When I say that we question where God is, I speak in the spiritual sense. It gets to the point where we're doing other things other than what God told us. It's in these moments that I understand firsthand that we want to give up. We want to say, I'm done. This is it. In my own life, when my wife talked about our separation, God had to separate us to work with us, to work on us. He had to separate me from there to get me into a place where I would truly listen to him. To get me to a place where I would say, God, I can't do this anymore and I need you right now. It was funny because my wife said it was tough for her because she would look at my social media and it looked like I was having the time of my life. But of course, I would only show that. What I didn't show is waking up every day not knowing what my purpose in life was. What I didn't show is waking up every day not knowing, why am I even here? What is the point to everything that I do? What is my purpose? What is my calling? Why can't I feel joy? Why am I constantly worried? Waking up every day not knowing, and this is the part that really, I'm so glad that God has saved me, not knowing what true love is, not knowing what forgiveness is. Sometimes God has to do things inside of us before he can allow it to happen, allow something he can do for us. He has to work inside of us. Remember that walking with determination means that failure is not a permanent condition. Yes, you may fail. Yes, you may fall. Yes, you may have setbacks. But you don't have to stay there. You don't have to identify yourself with that failure. You don't have to say, well, this is all, I keep messing up. No. Keep messing up and keep moving forward. Because God is going to be there every single time. I guarantee you, and I speak from experience, that God is going to be there every single time. Ready to move you forward. I'm going to ask if we can get the worship team up. I don't know who in here has been praying and trusting God for something. Who's been praying, seeking God, wondering where he's at. All I can tell you right now is don't quit. You might be closer than what you think. Before I had the honor of being ordained in this ministry, I had reached that moment where I said, God, I don't know anymore. I don't know if this is for me. God, I don't know if maybe I got to go somewhere else. Maybe I got to do this. And me and my wife were ready to say, you know what? Here's the towel. We're done. We can move from here. Without knowing that God was already working in my pastor's heart. That God was already working in the pastoral team. That God was already preparing space, a place. It was already prepared. It was already there waiting. I don't know if that's you today, but I'm telling you right now, don't quit. Don't quit praying for that loved one. Don't quit fighting for your marriage. Don't quit fighting for your kids. Don't quit on your kids. Don't quit on your parents, young ones. They make mistakes. We make mistakes. Don't quit on them. Defeat will cause discouragement. Failure will discourage you. But the response to defeat is to take a posture of victory. Is to say, you know what? I had a setback. I failed. I messed up. I don't see the change, but I am going to worship and praise you like if you've already answered the prayer. Don't be blinded by one moment of defeat. Give thanks for many moments of victory in your life. For every time God showed up at the right time, for every healing that you saw happen, everything that you've seen in your life. Don't give up just because one moment of failure and I say, no, God, no. God, I praise you because I know you will get me through this. Just last week, and for those of you who don't know me, I am very transparent about my life, about the things that I go through. Because many times God deals with me before he brings me up here. Just last week, I found myself in that position, in a moment of failure. And I woke up and I didn't want to do anything. But I said, you know what? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to continue. I'm going to be determined and I'm going to walk. Just last week, I sat there and I lifted my hands through defeat, through the problem, through the pain. And I lifted my hands and I said, God, I give you all the honor, all the glory. I give you everything, Father. Whatever it is that you're feeling, give it to God. Whatever it is that you're dealing with, give it to God. Before we get into some worship, I want to share something that I found interesting and that I heard that really spoke to my heart. The Bible talks and refers to us as sheep, and it refers to God as the good shepherd. And sometimes we read things and we don't really read them understanding what's happening. But sheep aren't the creatures you get on top of and you start riding to your destination. Sheep aren't the ones you throw all your luggage on and say, come on, let's go. Sheep are not load-bearing creatures. Sheep aren't meant to carry anything. You are not meant to carry what you're carrying. The shepherd takes care of his sheep. He carries the water for them. He carries what they need. Give it to God. Give it to God. And what does that look like? What it looks like is not being home and being in your room and shutting out the world. Because I'm telling you, you will feel like that. I'm not gonna seek help. Nope. I'm gonna shut out the world. When you give it to God, you get up and you're determined and you continue to walk and you serve people. You bless people. You love people. You forgive. You do those things. And you give all the glory to God and you say, God, I don't want to feel like this anymore. Take this from me. And you walk in victory. You get up and you walk in victory. Why don't you stand to your feet?